Hello and welcome to the Cimlogic webinar, Quality by Design. My name is Claire Healy and I'm your facilitator for today's webinar. So today's webinar will be recorded, so we will ensure that the recording is sent out to you in a few days' time. So just a brief note on housekeeping. So we want to make this webinar as interactive as possible. So if you do have any questions during the webinar, please use the questions panel on the right hand side of your screen and we will address these at the end. If we do run out of time, we will answer your questions via email. Now I'd like to hand you over to today's host, Fraser Thompson, the Business Development Manager at Cimlogic. Over to you, Fraser.
Thank you very much, Claire. Once again, welcome along to this webinar entitled Quality by Design. My name is Fraser Thompson. As Claire said, I'm the Business Development Manager here with Cimlogic. My experience kind of goes back with Cimlogic for about 8 years, where I was working as a controls engineer in the kind of food and beverage and pharmaceutical industries. And then moving on into the MES area, looking at things like OEE, like quality, SPC, and traceability, and then further on into the business development role that I currently occupy. So that's kind of a little bit about my background. My underlying kind of passion really is about improving manufacturing and making sure that within, I guess, the UK economy, we make the most of the manufacturing base and get it back to what it should be as kind of the staple of our economy. So a little bit about us as Cimlogic. We are based over in a lovely part of the country in Saltaire in West Yorkshire. That's our office there on the left-hand side of the screen in the historic Salts Mill building in Saltaire. It's a very fine example of industry in the UK and what it can be. If you think all the way back to the first industrial revolution, buildings like Salts Mill were indeed the heart of the industry, particularly in this area in the north, in Bradford, in textile mills and so on. And what we're looking to do is to bring life to the current industrial revolution, if we like, Industry 4, as many people are calling it, and we're doing that in the historic setting where we like to believe Industry 1 kicked off. So as Cimlogic, we are a reasonably small company, around 35 people, and we again care deeply about manufacturing, and most importantly trying to improve manufacturing, removing inefficiencies, whether it be in production, whether it be in quality, and using the latest and greatest technology that's available to us to drive those improvements. So anytime I see a sheet of paper on a shop floor, I think there's an opportunity to modernise, to improve the way we do things. And that's going to be a little bit of the focus of today's webinar. So a few things we're going to cover off just briefly on the agenda. We're going to look at the need for effective quality management, if you like, and how we can spin that on its head by looking at quality management from an operations perspective. It's very important that the two are tied together. How we as Cimlogic can drive effective quality management with our systems that we offer, and then I'll run you through a reasonably quick demonstration of the principles in practice that we've talked about in the preceding slides. So hopefully everybody agrees with me when I say this, that the quality management is very important. As it says on the slide there, delivering products of the highest quality at reduced cost is or should be a top priority for all manufacturers. Now, hopefully that's a fairly safe statement. And the reasons quality management is important is some of which are detailed on the page in front of there, whether it be regulatory compliance in the pharmaceutical or in the food and beverage industries, whether it be looking at brand protection. The last thing we want to do really is affect our brand in the marketplace. That's what our sales are based on, and poor quality in the manufacturing process can follow through into a bad customer reputation. We certainly see a lot of inquiries recently for electronic quality management systems, which is a good thing for us, and it's definitely a good thing for the industry to see that things are progressing, that people are taking technology, modern technology that's available to them, and looking to implement that in their production process. Cost of poor quality is quite interesting. If I was to ask you as the audience if you were aware of the cost of a single unit that you produce being of poor quality, would you be able to answer that question? Would you be able to come up with the exact cost that one reject has had on your business? And you need to think about, obviously there's the production waste elements of it, so all of the raw materials that you consumed up until that point manufacturing that product. Essentially that's a cost you're not going to recover. You've got the cost of having to manufacture the batch again, so we're going to have to consume twice the raw ingredients, twice the raw materials, twice the labour, twice the energy, all to produce one-off, which we could have got right first time, if you like. So that's quite a high cost when you consider all of those elements, the labour, the ingredients, the energy. But also, depending on what you're producing, the cost of disposing of your scrap might also have a high impact. If, for example, you need to employ the services of a waste management company to environmentally friendly way of disposing of your production waste. These are all costs that can really add up. So quality management, total quality management, TQM, are all kind of designed around trying to ensure that we protect all of these things, that we look at our brand protection, our market image, our customer satisfaction, and make sure that we don't incur overdue costs for reproducing or reworking or wasting products. A couple of examples, some a little bit further away, some more recently, of instances where perhaps quality management hasn't delivered the kind of results that you would expect it to through kind of product recalls, really. So going all the way back to 2010, so not too far ago, Toyota had issues with a faulty accelerator pedal that forced them to recall 4.1 million vehicles across the US and Europe. And if you look at the projected impact of that particular quality incident, we're talking about roughly somewhere in the region of about $2 billion. So, you know, it can have far-reaching and very, very high-cost implications if we get quality control wrong. More recently, Samsung announced that they were recalling the recently launched Galaxy Note 7 smartphones as the batteries had a slight tendency to catch fire. Again, quality control. You know, what testing procedures were undertaken? You know, was anything short? Was there any shortcuts that were taken in the manufacturing process that meant that was missed? And again, the cost of that company, of that particular issue, is not fully understood yet, but it is estimated that it's going to be in the region of about $1 billion again. So two very, I guess, newsworthy but high profile and also very high impact cost incidents that all relate to kind of quality control. Slightly smaller issues, slightly close to home. If you look at the Food Standards Agency website, for example, I pretty much guarantee you every week there is some kind of incident of a product recall. Hemington Cheese, for example, on the 15th September had to recall a number of products because of an E. coli incident. Spa recently had to recall its own brand Midget Gems because, again, they possibly could have been contaminated by pieces of wood. Which all leads to the question, what quality control processes are in place and what should be in place by design to make sure that we capture these things through the manufacturing process? When we talk quality by design, what I mean is engineering quality into the manufacturing process rather than it being an afterthought. QC should not be something where we've gone all the way through the manufacturing process, we've completed a batch of products, and then we just check one or two at the very end against a light set of tests, and it's a guy from the QC department that comes down and does that. He disappears back into his lab, and nobody hears from him ever again until he says pass or fail, and he comes down to do the next one. We need to make sure that we integrate quality into the everyday manufacturing process. And that's kind of the focus, really. Quality systems tend not to be integrated with operations. They tend to be specialized, standalone, not part of the operation. So you might find that again, your QC guy up in the lab has his own systems. He does all of his testing, all of his lab results on those systems. And the operations team, the operators on the shop floor, their main focus is all about production, all about volume. So there's two almost complete sets or departments of people working to their own independent goals, independently of each other, when in fact they should be linked together. We need to make sure that we move towards a world where quality is integrated with operations, with engineering, with utilities, because everything there are interconnecting leaves, if you like, between all of these departments that should be brought together. And if we can do that, we can all start working together towards a common set of objectives. The common set of objectives should be to produce our volume at the highest possible quality, not to one department produce volume and the other department look at quality. And I'd probably say around 80% of the manufacturing companies that I see on a kind of weekly basis are generally using paper-based systems for their quality management. They're doing quality checks on paper, they're doing SPC checks on paper, they're doing hazard checks on paper, and at the end of the day or at the end of the shift, one of the operations team will compile all of those bits of paper together, and they'll maybe put it in a folder, and that folder will get sent up to QC, and he'll maybe look at that and store it away in a drawer, never to be seen again. Or perhaps somebody will take those manual bits of paper and they'll retype it all into Excel, and as they go along the journey there'll be some errors. And after somebody's typed it all into Excel, they'll send it to the quality department, and somebody will export it from Excel and import it into Minitab, and he'll start doing his analytics and his SPC control charts. And all of this kind of a week, 2 weeks, a month after the event. So after the quality incident may have occurred 2 weeks later, somebody's looking at the data, trying to analyse any trends or what happens. And hopefully we'd all agree 2 weeks later is 2 weeks too late, really. If we have an opportunity to identify a quality issue in the here and now, it's important that it's notified to the right people at the right time that have the skills and the ability to do something about it. So we need to make sure that firstly we try and reduce any human error that's brought into the system, regardless of best intentions. Some people's handwriting is difficult to read, for example. Somebody might forget to do a quality check at 1 o'clock when it was due, and maybe they do it at 2 o'clock instead of 1 o'clock, and they'll just take 2 samples. But in those times and in those potentially forgivable human error issues, it's something might have slipped through the net. One faulty accelerator pedal might have slipped through the net, causing this massive recall. So we need to make sure that quality is not seen as a separate function. We engage quality with production, and we try and cover off as many loopholes as we can with regards to the connection of quality systems with production. And that's kind of what we're going to focus on now. So how are we going to do that? Bringing together operations and quality. Well, what we want to do is we want to do a few things. Using a electronic or a systems approach rather than a paper-based approach, we should be able to improve both the accuracy and the timeliness of the data that we collect. So rather than doing end-of-batch single sample tests, we have the opportunity with modern technology, modern equipment, to do complete inline checks. We could check the weight of every bottle as it goes past a check weigh and record that. We could check samples on the line if we need to take samples at a particular time and do that in real time and ensure that it's done in real time. We could look at how we enforce workflows for the operators. So remember I said slightly earlier that it was about getting the right information to the right people at the right time. Well, if that information is telling us that there is an issue, what do we need to do about it? What is the immediate action that needs to be taken by the operators on the shop floor that are instantly able to take that action and make a positive impact on our production quality? So how can we do that with a system approach? Well, making it real time, engaging the operators, bringing information to them. We're going to be able to identify trends. We're going to be able to make predictions. If you look at, for example, the SPC control chart at the bottom right of the slide there, we can be starting to incorporate things like the rule of sevens. So if we're looking at maybe 6 or 7 previous sample points that all seem to be trending upwards, we're still creating saleable product to this point. Nothing's exceeded any threshold, but we've had 7 points that are all trending upwards. We can start to be a little bit more intelligent, a little bit more predictive about what might be about to happen. You know, we can still sell the product we're making at the moment, but perhaps in 2 or 3 minutes we're going to be starting to produce waste. So by highlighting that issue to somebody who's able to act on that data, we may be able to save the day, if you like, at this point, and make sure that we keep quality within control. And it's all about kind of actionable intelligence, really, not just data for data's sake. There's no point collecting data just for it to be stored away in a file and put away in a filing cabinet, and then hopefully, you know, when the auditors come back, we can dig out the right piece of paper or in the right filing cabinet in the right folder within 4 hours, and hopefully everything's okay. You know, hope is not a strategy. We need to make sure that we're able and confidently able to generate the data that we need in order to demonstrate good traceability and good quality management. So how can we help do that? Well, we have an approach, and we have software tools that enable us to drive real-time quality management through enabling technology that you already have and enabling the operators that you already have. We're looking at improving our yields, making sure that we're doing on-time HACCP checks, on-time fill weight checks, making sure that we're doing events and notifications to the right people, sending an email to the shift manager at the right time, looking at live control charts, looking at historical business intelligence, and doing it all through a single integrated platform that connects, as we described earlier, connects quality to engineering and quality to operations and operations to engineering, and essentially removing that ability to hopefully make quality mistakes through the manufacturing process. So what I'm going to do now is take you through a very quick demonstration of a software application and how we can use that software application to perhaps drive quality improvement. So if I just change the screen very quickly, hopefully what you can see in front of you now is a quite simple example of perhaps a quality management interface that we might see on the shop floor. So in the example that I'm showing you now, we have a dummy pharmaceutical facility, if you like, that's producing vials and tablets put into bottles, and they've got a production process, production plant. We're using our software application Traxis in this case to gather quality data from the shop floor. So in this case, what we're looking at here is a web-based application. So all of the interfaces, all of the reports, all of the analytics are delivered via web pages. Now this enables changes to be completed centrally at a server level and instantly rolled out, which means that our maintenance time for updates is much reduced, and hopefully giving you a lower total cost of ownership. But the idea being that by presenting this web-based interface to the operator on the shop floor, we're going to give them some prompts and some instructions as to what they should be doing. So let's say I'm looking at a filling area here. I'm filling, for example, maybe some kind of liquid or tablets, for example, into a bottle. I've got a task list down the left-hand side of the screen here, so straight away I can see as the operator that I haven't been doing my job for the last hour or so, because I've got all of my quality checks that are historical, and they're all highlighted red. They've not been completed on time. Now, that's the first kind of checkpoint to say, well, why haven't they been completed on time? Maybe there's something that we need to enforce here to make sure that this request to perform a check is acted on quickly. For example, if it's red for more than 5 minutes, maybe that needs to send an email or a notification, to the shift supervisor, and maybe they need to know about it. Maybe the QC lab need to know about it after half an hour, because they need to be making a decision to say, actually, we need to stop production because we have no idea if what we're producing is of good enough quality to actually sell. So the idea being that the operators are presented with the information straight away that would normally just be a line on a spreadsheet they might, or a line on a piece of paper they may or may not fill in at the right time. So we're going to start with, let's look at a fill weight check, for example. The one that's green, let's do that one first. What that's going to do is going to bring an electronic form to the operator in this case. It's going to ask them to take 5 samples from the line, perhaps put them on a scale, confirm what their fill level is, and we're going to go through filling out one of these forms very quickly. So me as the operator, I'm going to put my name in or sign in with my swipe card, and I'm going to start taking my samples, and I'm going to say we're reading at 92, 93, 92, 94, and 90. So I've taken my 5 samples. I'm going to save that point away, and what that's going to do is going to plot a new point on my control chart here that gives me a mean of 92. So I can see here that straight away that's on my target line. Now if I was to click on the point, I can see the information that we've entered. I can see my 5 samples. I can see that I was the user, the time of day that I completed the test, what my upper control limits and upper saleable limits were, lower control limits, etc. And I can see my subgroup mean there is a nice green value at 92.2, and we're all happy because that's a good data set. So we're pretty sure what we're producing at the moment is of good quality. What we can see, however, is that at 8:24 we had an issue because I've gone over the upper control limit. I can see I've got a subgroup mean there of about 96.2. So again, clicking into that, I can see the individual samples were all kind of above my mean value. They're all above my upper control limit. That's giving me a mean, again, that's above my upper control limit. And again, we need to think about what actions need to happen because of this. Do we, again, for example, need to send an email notification to the QC lab to say, I've had a sample, or I've had a number of samples that are above my or below my control limit. We need to make a decision about starting or stopping the line, or do we need to change some kind of parameter? Again, this is all populated in real time. So what I've shown you here is an example of a manual quality check, and those checks can be triggered by any number of reasons, really. Historically or typically within manufacturing processes, you might be doing quality checks on a time basis. So maybe you're doing checks every half an hour or every hour, but you also might be doing checks on a unit production basis. So maybe when we've produced every 1,000 units, we need to take 5 samples. What you may or may not have considered is that you might also want to do event-driven quality checks. So perhaps after we do a changeover on the line, or after we have a particular type of breakdown on the line, we need to enforce the first 5 to be quality checked, for example. So you need to think about what these real-time triggers are. And also, if you're doing in-line quality checking, you can be checking every single unit as it goes. What I'm going to do now very quickly is just look at the other test there, so the bottle inspection test. So at this point we can see I've got a slightly different form here. This time it's asking me for again, it's asking for my username. It's asking me for a total number of samples. So I might say I've taken 100 samples. How many of those bottle samples had cap damage? Maybe we had 2. Label damage, let's say we had 10. bottle damage. Let's say we had another 2. And again, we can save that off. And again, we can see on the chart at the bottom for my bottle inspections that that's caused a non-conformity. We've had a defect count of 14, which is 14%, which is above my upper control limit. So again, what does that need to trigger? What does that need to do in order to correct the process? Do we need to adjust the labeler? Do we need to change the torque settings on the cap, for example? And all of these things can be triggered electronically. So that's very much about quality checks on the line. What you might also be considering is what we do about HACCP checks, for example. Again, a very simple kind of interface for the operator on the line. He's got a task list down the left-hand side here. We can see his historical tasks as they've been completed here. How long have they been active for example, this here should only take 5 minutes, but we can see it's been active for 1 hour and 6. So again, it's not been completed on time. Or here it's been completed on time, but it's taken slightly longer than it should have taken. So we can kind of start to trend and see what's happening on these HACCP checks. And you can see they're being created on a reasonably regular interval, about every 15 minutes by the system here. So again, another simple electronic form, again quite a little bit different from the previous form. We can see that we've been asked to fill in temperatures and select things from drop-down boxes. And what we can also do is try and build in an element of error proofing of the system. So if I try and say, for example, without having filled in the form, we can see that I'm being prompted there that the filling tank temperature cannot be 0 and must be between 20 and 50. I haven't selected a response for the metal detectors check, etc. So I can come in here and say, okay, I did my filling tank temperature and it was 62. I tested my metal detectors, they passed. Clear scrap from the casey, yes I did that. Was soap available in the hand wash station? Yes it was. Did I inspect any damaged products? Yes I did. Save that away. And again, because I entered a value of 62, it's told me that was outside of the possible threshold. So again, let's check that in at 45 and save that away. And again, that clears off that particular test. You can see that I've done one on time. Now, when we talk about workflow, we talk about if one of these tests, for example, should fail, what are we going to do about it? So let's pass the metal detector and pass the scrap from the case, but I'm going to fail the soap available in this particular case and pass the inspect damaged products. So we've failed one of our HACCP checks now. What are we going to do about that? Well, what we should be able to do is trigger another activity for the operator to go and complete. So because they failed on the soap, they've now been prompted that they need to refill the soap dispenser. So confirm you're the operator. Have you filled or refilled the soap dispenser? Yes, I have. And tick accept that as a completed activity. So these electronic forms can be as kind of far and as wide and as detailed as you might imagine, really, and all designed around your particular process. The idea is you want to make the form as simple as and intuitive to fill in, and it wants to, as clearly as possible, if you're using paper-based forms currently, match your current paper-based process. For example, here is another example of an hourly fill weight check, but in this case I might be automatically capturing information from scales via a USB or some kind of serial interface. In this case I can also link in to electronic documentation, so perhaps there is a standard operating procedure for completing this fill weight check. We've never done one before. Here's a quick instruction SOP or a PDF that shows how I should complete this particular test. And again, I can save that away to instruct that I've done it. I can see who did it, at what time of day they did it, when it was supposed to be due, and so on. And all the way through this, what we're doing is we're building up a picture that goes into our traceability. So going back to the issues we saw earlier with product recalls or issues from the Food Standards Agency, what you might have, God forbid, is a customer complaint. Let's say a customer phones up and says, these bottles you sold me, they appear to be tainted. It looks like there's a little bit of plastic got out of the bottle, it's gone into the liquid. You might want to have a look at recalling this batch. Okay, Mr. Customer, tell me about the bottles, for example, that you use. Tell me the batch code, and we get it all the way back, and we say, right, these are the bottles from the supplier. That's their lot number. What I need to do is instantly find where those bottles have been used. So going back to the case of the Toyota faulty accelerator pedal incident, let's imagine for a moment that they had 10 suppliers of accelerator pedals and only one of them were faulty. So rather than recalling every single model of that particular car to check all of the accelerator pedals, we could have built in the test to say, actually, what we only want to do is we only want to recall models and cars that had accelerator pedals from this supplier. And we can use the lot number to do a quick search. So in this case here, I can see that these bottles of this lot number that were recalled have been used in 4 batches. These products in these quantities by these operators in these time. I can get all the way down in to say, actually, yeah, show me all the materials that went into those bottles. Do I have any more on hand? Well, actually, yeah, I do. I've got another 213 of these bottles that are stored away in warehouse location 13.4. So as well as going out to the market and recalling the other 4 batches that use those bottles, I want to go and take those bottles off my shelves so I don't produce any more poor quality products. So hopefully that's a little bit of an example of what that kind of quality information can be used for. And at that point, it's kind of bringing us up towards the end of the webinar. What I did want to show you very quickly is how dynamic these electronic forms can be. So for example, you can see here this HACCP check has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 test points in it. If I jump very quickly across to the model of my plant in my software system, I should be able to make some product changes, hopefully. It's not coming up on my screen there, which is interesting. Let's see if I can get it full screen. No, it's not going to play ball for me in this particular webinar. That's the joy of doing a live webinar. So at that point, I'm going to hand you back across to Claire to wrap up the webinar.
Yep. Right, that's great. Thank you, Fraser. That was a really, really great presentation with some fantastic tips and insights into the technology tools that are available out there to improve quality management. So if you have submitted any questions using the control panel, we will respond to them via email. And just to remind you that we have recorded this webinar, so we will send it out to you over the next few days. So feel free to share it with your colleagues and re-watch at your pleasure. So if you would like to discuss quality in more detail with one of our MOM experts, please feel free to email inquiries@cimlogic.co.uk or give us a call on 01274 599 955. And if you would like further information about our MOM solutions, please visit our website www.cimlogic.co.uk/MOM solutions. So thanks again for joining us today, and we hope you enjoyed the webinar, and see you soon. Thank you.